My name's Ray, I'm 24 and I'm autistic and I work as an assistant psychologist in an autism assessment team.
So my name's Eliza and I'm 19.
I really like games, so like video games, board games, tabletop role-playing games. I'm a big games person.
I'm a very active person, so I do a lot of sports. Yeah, quite creative, very family orientated. Yeah, I like extreme sports like climbing and skydiving and stuff like that, yeah.
I say probably an attention to detail. Like if I get interested in something, I can sort of really get into it and sort of learn everything about it. Yeah.
Probably helping people. I think that's always been a part of my kind of makeup in that. My social battery is very limited. I do struggle in certain situations and can become very overwhelmed, and probably the sensory part of it as well. It can get quite overwhelming and then it all become very much like a lot and then get dysregulated, and it's kind of hard to communicate with words sometimes how you're feeling and be able to get across how you're feeling and understanding those emotions.
Probably kind of socialising as a whole. I think especially like unstructured socialising, so you know the kind of events you go to where you're just sort of mingling with people and there's not really an activity, like things like that I find really difficult. Like I much prefer doing socialising when there's like an activity. So things like, you know, board games nights or playing video games with friends and things like that.
Yeah, so for the majority of people, they might not even think about social interaction as being something to even think about, I guess. Whereas for a lot of people on the spectrum, social interaction can be quite like an invisible maze. It's like, you know, one of those mazes where it's got all the mirrors that you bounce off and you've no clue where you're going, because there's not necessarily always the understanding of social boundaries and the social rules. So that can be very hard about understanding what you think you're supposed to say and what you do say, and then what's appropriate. So I think there's a lot of thinking that goes into it, and especially with people who are on the spectrum and have anxiety, then it can be very exhausting. So it feels a lot like running a marathon on top of doing a normal day's work, which also feels like twice the hard, like double the load of what it might do for a neurotypical. So I think it's that kind of understanding that actually if someone's just does not, or is like very limited in their language, it might not just be them, it just might mean that they're literally on their last energy and just trying to reserve it to just, yeah, get through the day, I guess. Yeah, definitely. So I've had a lot of unhelpful things, but only recently been able to kind of get more helpful things. So before I would smash stuff up and that would get me into quite a bit of trouble, not only like just with other people, but also just because I'd smashed up my hand and then been injured. But now I've got a lot better at using pressure therapy. I think that's quite a big thing for me. Whether you get support from like someone that you trust or do it yourself, that helps a lot. Also kind of finding a space, whether it be sensory or not, like lighting is so important, and smell and sound. It really depends what it is, because with sensory it's very much, it can be, you can do something that might help one time and then it not help the other time, but also you can do something that you think is helping and actually it's doing the complete opposite. It's like you've got to do linear or other movement, and it really depends on that situation. Yeah, I mean, some of the things I've seen quite interesting, and for someone who's been told their whole life that they're not, or they couldn't be because you're not bouncing off the walls, it's kind of quite hard. But I understand maybe people trying to, I don't know, trying to bring it into talking points, but I don't know, I think social media has its own. That's a very complex world in itself. I think it's when it comes to the symptoms, when people say that you know, the kind of test things, if you feel this way, then there's a good chance you are ADHD. I mean, I was told, like, I did a test and I was told that I wasn't autistic. I am, but I think but a lot of people might think, oh, I think like, oh, I can't concentrate sometimes. Maybe I'm ADHD and it's more than just one thing. I mean, it's very complex and you've got to tick a lot of boxes for it. And it can cross over a lot. But definitely stuff like that, or like what it might look like. Don't get me wrong, there's some really helpful things out there where I'm, you know, understanding. I've found a lot of the way I understand my ADHD from a lot of people online, especially people who are ADHD themselves. So I think that's really good.
I think just not making assumptions, like both in the sense of, say, if I say something and it comes across a bit rude, maybe sort of not assuming that I intended to be rude and it's just kind of my different communication, but also not assuming kind of my needs as an autistic person. I think that's a lot of the reason why high functioning as a label I don't find particularly helpful, because from an outside perspective somebody might see me as high functioning because I have a degree, I live independently, I have like a part-time job, but I also have support needs. And I think kind of if you just assume that because somebody kind of has achieved things in life, it doesn't mean that they don't have support needs as an autistic person. I think the idea that autism looks one way, I think especially because of the media representation of autism, there's kind of very little, especially of like autism in women. I think people see it as looking one way, you know, it's like young boys who are interested in trains, that kind of thing. I think, you know, autism as a condition, like as a community, we're hugely diverse and different. And I think, yeah, I wish that more people understood that.
I think the thing that you don't look autistic, I get that so much. I think that can be quite hard because it's very much, I get that people don't maybe think when they say it, but it dismisses maybe the struggles that you might have and stuff like that. And maybe I think especially with social media at the moment, it's becoming maybe glamorized a bit more than what it should be. And I think it's definitely like understanding the person rather than the autism, because it is the person at the end of the day, and it's just so you're understanding how that person works, not how their autism works in a sense. But yeah, I think it's just about, they're all different as well. We're not all the same, and we're not like, it's nothing out of Rain Man, because I'm not very good at maths. So yeah, I'm not sitting there counting toothpicks. So yeah, it's very much, that's not reality. For majority of the time, it's not reality. I think what I'm learning is to, instead of fighting against it and trying to, I guess maybe like for a lot of people on the spectrum or ADHD, they try their whole lives to be normal, to be neurotypical, or to act how society wants them. And actually, I think I've realised that that's probably impossible. And actually everyone there's not a normal as such. So it's about learning to live with it and live with myself instead of living in a way that other people expect me to. And I think that's hard to come by. I mean, I'm only 19, so hopefully I've got a life ahead of me to carry on jumping out of planes and doing crazy stuff like that.